Many people write articles and make videos about programming, but few ever reveal their education or experience. Now, I don't believe that's ethical. If a student shows an initiative to learn, the teacher owes that student some validation. I mean, everyone deserves to know whether or not their instructor is competent, right? So, before teaching you to build websites, I will show you the respect of listing my credentials. So, I'm going to give you a short version and a long version of my qualifications. So the short version is just 5 things. Number 1, I've been using computers since 1984, 35 years ago. That means if you're really young, I was programming computers before you were born. And if you're getting old, I started using computers back when you were still really good looking. And number 2, as of 2019, I have been earning a living building websites professionally for over 21 years. Number 3, I was going to tell you how much money I've made building websites, but that's tacky, so let's skip it. And number 4, I spent nearly 7 years building websites at Walt Disney Studios. And number 5, I have taught classes in web development to my fellow Walt Disney cast members. Now, personally, I've been given the authority to hire developers and new employees in the past, and if I were looking to hire an internet programmer, I wouldn't need any additional evidence. Those 5 traits alone would tell me this person was competent, knowledgeable, and would make a great asset to any company. I mean, heck, if Walt Disney Studios trusts someone to teach web development, clearly that person knows what they're doing. I would not care what their most recent projects were, what languages they knew. Those things, they just wouldn't matter. What would matter to me is that they had clearly paid their dues and proven they're a qualified and valuable employee. Now, many of you are undoubtedly intelligent people, well-versed in the human condition, who agree with my assessment, and you are now adequately convinced of my sterling credentials. Now, for those folks who are simply curious to know more, I can share the very long version of my career. So here goes. I've been programming since childhood, when my friends and I would spend hours after elementary school composing choose-your-own-adventure text games on Apple IIe computers in BASIC. By the time we reached high school computer classes, my friend Mike and I invented our own curriculum because the courses were so boring and simplistic, and we needed to do something a bit more challenging. Our high school computer teacher was literally starting with, "This is the power button. You switch it on to turn on the computer." And we were like, oh God, we're way past that point, okay? So I built my first website on a whim in the summer of 1997 as a way to promote my first novel, The Gothic Rainbow. I woke up one morning and thought, websites are becoming a popular thing. Maybe I should make one to showcase my book. So I did. I had no idea what I was doing. I researched the process, and within a few days, I had taught myself to design and program my first website. Now, back then, there were no classes in high school or even in college to teach any of this. Web development was cutting-edge technology, and the only way to learn it was to educate yourself. I mean, heck, the first website had only been built 6 years ago. So a few months later, I applied for my first developer position at a company called Acme Express in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. Now, I didn't get the job at Acme Express, but I recommended my childhood friend Mike Rozak for the role, and they hired him. About 6 months later, when the graphic designer at Acme Express quit, Mike suggested they hire me, and they did. So it worked out great. I helped Mike to land his first computer programming job, and then he helped me to land my first programming job at the same company. So that was pretty cool. So working at Acme Express was my first opportunity to really learn a lot about web design and development and programming. Now these days, people who build sites are compartmentalized into many different specialized roles. But back then, 21 years ago, we had to be good at everything. We were UX UI designers, SEO specialists, front-end developers, HTML experts, JavaScript programmers, database specialists, and back-end developers all rolled into one. Back then, we were just designers or programmers. We didn't specialize, we learned to do it all. Now, after leaving Acme Express, I went to a company called PR Webcast, where we did some of the very first live business-to-business webcasting events in the history of the internet. We would set up video cameras and a portable computer and broadcast presentations of corporate meetings live on the web. It was very innovative stuff. It's commonplace today, but in 1999, we were pioneering genuinely state-of-the-art work. I was the second employee hired at that company, and I did everything from programming the website, to designing our magazine advertising, to building out and purchasing equipment for our video production studio. Sadly, I got laid off from PR Webcast. Now, I had never lost a job in my life, and I was living on my own with rent to pay. So, needless to say, it was a terrifying experience. I mean, how was I going to keep a roof over my head and food on the table? What was I going to do now? How would I survive? I spent the next 2 years searching for a job, and I was never able to find any more work in Cleveland. Despite all my knowledge and experience, not one company in my hometown had the wherewithal to hire me. As the song says, I never dreamed home would end up where I don't belong. It was time to move on. Since I had no future in Cleveland, I relocated to the place I had dreamed of living all my life, sunny California. So since coming to the West Coast in 2003, I've done web development at a Hollywood gaming company called ODVD Games, where I was laid off in less than a year. I've done web development in Compton for the largest Jeep customizing company in the world, Four Wheel Parts. I've done web development in Woodland Hills for Weeder Publications, home of the Mr. Olympia contests, where I was laid off in a month. I've done web development in Culver City for American Idol, where I was laid off in less than a year. I've done web development in Chatsworth for a printing company, where I was laid off in less than a year. Needless to say, this is a rather disheartening pattern, and I'm being totally sincere. I was never fired from any of these jobs. These were all layoffs. How many people do you know been laid off 5 times in their career? Not too many. I have the weirdest job karma ever. I was laid off 5 times in 4 years. It's just nuts. But finally there was hope. In the spring of 2006, after years of struggling to find steady work in California, fate stepped in and finally gave me a chance at the greatest opportunity of my professional career. I landed a job as a web developer at Walt Disney Studios, and I have never been happier at any other job in my life. It was phenomenal. And the most amazing part was that Disney came looking for me. I didn't even apply for the job. They asked to see me. So how did that happen? Well, I was signed up with a placement agency called Aquint, and Disney happened to recruit people through Aquint. So Disney saw my profile among a list of Aquint candidates and said, "We want to meet that guy." So I went on 2 face-to-face interviews at Disney, and within a day or 2 I was hired. Within a year, I was converted to a full-time cast member, and I spent the next 6 years working with the greatest team of people I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. All of my fellow Disney cast members were smart and friendly and competent, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt I was employed at a place where I was truly appreciated, and my work had genuine purpose. I've never been more proud of my job and my career. I finally made my mark. I had finally validated my worth. I would never need to go on another interview or have to impress anyone. I had paid my dues. I climbed onto such a lofty plateau of prestige and respect in my career, I would never need to prove myself to people ever again. Being at Disney is like being at NASA. I mean, once you're accepted into an organization so momentous, you will never need to convince peers of your value. My long years of struggling were finally over. I felt I had truly accomplished something. Until I was laid off. Again. That fateful day happened in the fall of 2012, taking out about 100 of my fellow cast members, wiping out my entire department and all of our managers. And I'm not ashamed to admit, losing my job at Disney was the most painful and disappointing experience of my professional career. I mean, that was my dream job. If I can't be a fighter pilot or an astronaut, building websites for Walt Disney seemed like a darn good alternative. I mean, I wanted to retire from Disney. I wanted to stay there for 30 years. Alas, that was not my fate. In 2014, I landed a job at a real estate investment company. It wasn't Disney, but it paid the bills. You know, coworkers would ask me all the time, "How did you end up here? You're so talented." I'd tell them, "Hey, I'm nothing special. I'm just like you. I do what it takes to survive." You know? There's no sense in holding out for the perfect job because life has taught me that any job can be taken away from you. I have to keep a roof over my head the same as anybody else. So I managed to stay there for 4 years. Then they went bankrupt, underwent a SEC fraud investigation, and I was laid off. Yeah, that was 5 months ago. And been looking for work ever since. So have you been keeping count? I've been laid off 7 times. 7. I was never fired once, but I have been laid off 7 times in 17 years. But that's okay. I have repeatedly proven my value more than enough times, and my work truly speaks for itself. And if I fail to hit the lottery, earn a living from my novels, or marry Charlotte McKinney, I'll just keep searching for a stable job at a company that will recognize my worth. Now, thankfully, I have been appreciated by my peers and had many coworkers say lots of nice things about me. Naturally, I do not expect you to actually read all of these quotations. I'm showing them way too fast for you to be able to do that. But if you are curious about the wonderful things that coworkers have said about me, feel free to pause the video on any one of these quotes and read it more at length and at your leisure. So there you go. There's all the quotes from my coworkers. Knowing my professional experience is only partially relevant. Now, I don't know about you, but I prefer having teachers who are well-rounded individuals. Teachers should not be robots, merely regurgitating the knowledge of their career skills. We're human beings with countless facets to our personalities, and all of our life experiences inform our competence. A valuable teacher has multiple interests and accomplishments. They possess wisdom and intellect about subjects outside the realm of their instruction, right? Let me give you a prime example. I've written and published 11 books, including 6 novels. Now, I once had a recruiter tell me I shouldn't include such information on my web development resume because it wasn't relevant. Well, first of all, I was stunned that she was so rude, but more importantly, I was astonished by her monumental ignorance. I told this girl, my experience as a novelist is extremely relevant to my expertise as a programmer. Writing novels proves I'm creative, and I strive to come up with original solutions to problems. It reveals I have the capacity to organize huge amounts of information into a cohesive product. It illustrates the fact I am diligent and I see big projects through to completion. From a technical standpoint, being a novelist may not have anything to do with building a website, but being an author allows any perceptive person to recognize my devotion to finishing challenging, large-scale endeavors. The fact I needed to explain this to a recruiter told me she didn't know her job very well. Additionally, it also told me she didn't view her clients as human beings. She saw them as machines and automatons, only interested in their technical expertise and oblivious to their virtues as people. You are far more than a student. I am far more than a teacher. And those facets of my personality inform everything I do, including building websites. I am a native English-speaking, fifth-generation American citizen, born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. That is relevant too. The fact I want to share such information demonstrates a sense of American pride and Midwestern values, a down-home, blue-collar work ethic. I am licensed to solo pilot a hang glider, to drive a truck, to ride a motorcycle, and I can canter a horse. All of those things show you I ain't a sissy. I could shoot firearms, cruise on snowboards, and sword fight. I've been trained to shoot by county sheriffs, trained to sword fight in the Society for Creative Anachronism. I'd say that shows I'm not a sissy either. My photography has been showcased and sold in art galleries from Ohio to Los Angeles. Now, since people have bought my work, it affirms that I'm a pretty good photographer, and getting good at photography takes some commitment. And it also proves that I'm not one of those socially inept, weirdo, awkward computer nerds, because cute models don't voluntarily hang out with creepy computer nerds. I wrote, directed, and starred in a series of instructional skateboarding videos called Learn to Ride a Skateboard, which have been viewed by over 5 million people. This confirms my other instructional projects are popular and well received. You know, the average high school teacher with 7 periods and a class of 30 students across 2 semesters teaches about 240 students per year. With over 5 million views on my skateboarding videos, I have taught a quantity of students the equivalent of teaching high school for 11,900 years. When a project goes viral to the point that 5 million people pay attention to your instructions, you have to be pretty good at teaching. As another side project, I purchased several acres of the Mojave Desert where I documented the design and building of an off-grid tiny house project. Being a strange old hermit out in the desert doesn't tell you anything other than the fact that I might be a Jedi Knight pursued by Darth Vader. So are those good enough credentials? You don't need to see my credentials. And one last thing. If you want to read the most detailed resume ever written, just read the book I like to call my vocational autobiography, entitled How You Can Get a Job at Walt Disney Studios Without a College Degree. That is 300 pages of my life story telling you everything about my career, from my first paper route when I was 12 years old to working at the most prestigious entertainment company in the world. As I said at the beginning, if you're going to invest your time into learning from me, I owe you the courtesy of sharing my qualifications. So, if you decide that my experience makes me worthy of teaching you, then I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. And as always, remember, kids, the world owes you nothing until you create things of value.